No be juju
The African mythology podcast you never knew you needed.
vibes.
Each episode will recount tales of mind blowing mythological figures and analyze their stories and characters, searching for parallels between the diverse African pantheons as well as popular culture on the continent and beyond. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Hear the stories that reflect the way we were and who we are. Subscribe to Nobi Juju, the African mythology podcast you never knew you needed. It's all right, so please, no be Hello, everyone. Hope you had a
Welcome
good week.
to the pod.
Welcome back. If you're back,
I hope,
welcome.
I hope you're back.
Yes, we do like those that come back.
To those who are back, I also thank you to those who are listening for the first time. Please
Yes,
also come back later on.
that would be great.
Do not judge
Highly
us by
advisable.
our past upload schedule. We are, as you can see, committing to more regular uploads.
We
So
are
please bear with us.
quite.
All right, all right, all right. Um, we are gonna be doing going into vibe of the week. I'll be doing my vibe of the week today, and then cue the jingle. Vibe of the week.
The jingle.
In post production. Anyway, my vibe of the week is a movie called The Backrooms. I don't know if you've heard about it. I feel
Oh,
like it's been
wow.
quite popular, or
I've
maybe not.
heard about it vaguely, but I don't know what it's about.
Yeah, so it's like I love my horror slash psychological thriller type things, but it's basically it's quite an interesting sort of backstory, for lack of a better word. So it's a movie that has like very interesting sort of background lore. So originally it was like it started off like as an internet sort of lore on like 4chan or like 4chan like creepy pasta. I don't know if you guys remember like 4chan creepy pasta. I mean 4chan was a cursed place.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but I for it was sort of like a creepy pasta thing where you just had like random people make like horror based lore around just random things. Starting in 2019, um, and it basically like portrayed this like massive, large, like extra dimensional
Hmm.
complex of like, empty yellow rooms. So it was just like very people posting like very eerie pictures of like large spaces
Oh, my.
underground and like sort of blurry pictures. It was like a very so it started off very vague and then people started adding to the lore. And then this random YouTuber named Kane Parsons then made a series of short films, or like it started off with one short film, and then
Hmm.
when it started picking up traction, he's made like a whole web series about it, and he sort of developed the idea and the background to it even more, and he had like a bit of like a documentary type feel where it was filmed on like an old camera, and it was like a POV type of filming where you're sort of like following the character around and you're seeing it from what's it, the point of view of the main character, and
Hmm.
it just had like this like very like eerie feel to it. And then he then got the amazing opportunity to make the movie.
Wow.
A24 picked it up, um, and he got the opportunity to be the director, which is big because
That's
he's just like
huge.
sort of random YouTuber, and then he just got this like
Life
just
of
massive,
lifetime
yeah,
opportunity.
literally. And the
Yeah.
main character is Chiwetel Ejiofor. Like I was just like,
Oh
wow,
yeah.
this is
Wow.
crazy. Like he
Yeah.
just hit like a jackpot
Yes.
randomly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll try not to be spoilery, but it basically follows like Chiwetel's character whose name is Clark, who I would say is an emotionally troubled man.
Mm.
He owns like this massive furniture store, and underneath the store, he finds this portal to like the alternate dimension called the back rooms, and which is like that endless sort of yet space with like lots of rooms, and
Mm-hmm.
you keep going and the rooms will continue and you go into another room and then there's another, like it's like, and
Yeah.
something, and the things are sort of like uncanny valley. So there are things from the real world there, but they're not quite right, they're a bit off, and they have this like sort of weird feeling to them. And I wouldn't say sort of what happens, but like basically it ends up exploring things of themes of like how our trauma or like unresolved emotional issues don't only like affect us but also people around us, um as well. And yeah, it's just really a really good movie. I think their horror movies are kind of moving from like sort of the more, I would say, stereotypical, or I mean they usually have really bad reviews, horror movies. I would say they usually have really bad reviews
They do.
historically because they
They
can be a
do.
little bit corny and like the plot's not well developed. But like, I feel like horror movies these days are becoming more fleshed out,
Hmm.
and yeah, very, exploring like complex themes um a bit more. And yeah, obviously even with like obviously um, Jordan Peele and things like that. Like I think there's a new era of horror movies coming out that, yeah, it's, yeah, a lot more a lot more fleshed out, I would say, in terms of the plot. It's not just jump scares. I mean, there are jump scares in the movie, but it's a lot more than just that.
That's really
So yeah,
cool.
it was a really really cool movie. I
Yeah.
recommend. I'll just say, if you're going to watch that tonight, just watch cartoons after.
Okay.
I watched it right before I went to bed, and
Ah.
I regret it. I regret it. Uh,
Wow. All
yeah,
right.
yeah,
So it's very, very scary.
yeah.
All
I won't say
right.
it's like scary. It's not like, it's more like eerie and creepy. Like you just have like this like unsettled feeling
Okay.
throughout.
Yeah.
And obviously they are like scary bits, but it's just like the whole movie is just like this like unsettled, scary, like unsettled, like eerie feeling. Whereas like something's not quite right, but you can't really place your finger on what. And I think those are like the best types of horror movies where it's like,
Yeah.
it's not just, oh, ah, okay, and then ah, like it's not,
It's not just like,
yeah,
yeah, the cheap jump scares.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like more troubling and unsettling than I
yeah.
guess. Yeah, I mean it's really cool. Like I've heard quite a bit about like in Parsons, like his name kind of floating around in the media and things, but I hadn't like had time to really look into the film or look into the backstory in detail. But it sounds really, yeah, it sounds really cool. I think even I'm sure for people who were familiar with his work as a YouTuber, being able to see, that transition into like the big screen and see how they adapted that for that sort of cinematic experience. I think, yeah, that would have been really cool to see. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely I'm gonna look it up, post this.
Yeah,
Very
it's good.
cool.
And the budget, just looking at the budget, was less than 10 million.
Oh
Can you
wow.
guess how much it made?
400?
Yep,
Yeah.
four
So
hundred
I
million.
think I think that was how I heard about it
Mm.
because people were saying there was this one, Backrooms, and then also Obsession as well is a
Oh
similar
yeah,
one.
I need to watch that as well. Yeah.
It's a similar one where it's an indie director with very minimal budget and yeah, huge success. So they're kind of, looking a little bit more at indie filmmakers, and indie filmmakers are kind of paying more attention and like, okay, if we can looking at different ways to bring things to life. And yeah, it's definitely interesting
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah. Cool. So over to you.
So yes, guys. So today we're doing things a little bit differently. So for those who know Nobi Juju, an African mythology podcast, normally we spend a little more time discussing our vibes. We do a little bit more in terms of the myths and the legends, from my perspective, from Ladi's perspective. But today we're going to do a slightly different format, so more of a mini-sode type format. So I will be kind of kicking us off with the and wrapping us up, to be very honest, with the myth for today.
Wrapping us up.
And then yeah, kicking us off and then wrapping us up with the
Oh
myth.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's just gonna be, yeah, me doing that. And we'll do this for the next episode as well. So kind of a more, yeah, just a tighter delivery experience. Or just, trying something out. We'll see what you guys think about it, and yeah, very keen to dig
Hmm.
into things. So today we are digging into the world of Igbo spirituality and Igbo cosmology. So very interestingly, this is I looked back at a lot of our episodes and I was surprised that this is not a universe that we've been able to touch so much on, which is why we're excited today to kind of dig a little bit into it, understand frameworks, understand some different mythological figures and deities, and Igbo spirituality itself. So, where do we start? So, we start with the center of Igbo cosmology, Chuku. So, the name Chuku itself is quite instructive. Chi is a spiritual force or divine essence, and Uku means great. So Chuku, which is really at the center of Igbo spirituality and cosmology, is the supreme spiritual force, the creator, a source. Some traditions refer to this as Chineke, the Chi who creates. And so these are not necessarily, this is not like different, types of gods, but it's more of different facets of the same reality. And the Chuku is not, is a vast deity. He's a high deity, kind of quite yeah, just quite expansive, and differs from other deities where can you can maybe have direct channel of communication to. Because he is so vast, he works through intermediaries, and these intermediaries are known as the Alusi, divinities in Igbo cosmology. Some scholars describe these Alusi as being having been created by Chuku. Others say that they didn't really emerge from him, but they more kind of emanate from him, like offspring rather than creations. So this is quite important because it shapes also how the Igbo relates to the Alusi. So in some sense, they are related to them, but in other sense, one scholar said that actually they're kind of like the executive heads of different departments in Chuku's cosmic government. So Chuku kind of as a kind of omnipotent kind of deity with other kind of smaller divine kind of beings is quite similar to some kind of Abrahamic religions where it's you have one main god and then others kind of following from that. Each divinity similar to many of the deities that we've kind of covered on this podcast, have specific functions, and their names almost always describe what that function is. So there's Allah, who's the earth goddess, Amadioha, who's the god of thunder and justice. I was actually quite surprised because obviously we did the gods of thunder episode. That was one of our early episodes, and I'm
Mm.
surprised we didn't speak about Amadioha.
Amadioha. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't done that.
I'm not sure why. I think I do remember I was discussing Amadioha, but like I don't know why. I think maybe wanted to explore other parts of Africa as well, potentially. But
Yeah, I think so. I think that was more what it was like. But yeah, I guess that's why, this episode for us, it's not just about yeah, so obviously, with the podcast we love to share these myths with you, but it's also learning for us as well.
mm,
Um so there's so many deities, but there's three that we're going to spend most of our time with today. One is Anyawu, the sun, Ekwensu, the warrior and trickster, and Agwu, a divine patron of healers. These are not, they're not kind of minor local deities. They kind of are, significant forces that resonate across the entire Igbo world. Before colonization, a lot of these figures were venerated across tens of millions of people in what is now southeastern Nigeria. So we'll start with Anyanwu, who is the sun deity and literally the eye of light in terms of the description. We've covered a number of different mythological pantheons where basically cultures have kind of, venerated the sun as not just a source of heat but of crops and life. That is also the case in Igbo culture, but Anyanwu goes a little bit deeper. So they named Anyanwu the eye of the light. So, an eye is not just a source of illumination, but it also allows us to see things. And so Anyanwu carries implications for both insight and foresight. So insight being the capacity to see things as they really are in the present, most commonly, and then foresight being the ability to see something coming before it arrives. So praying to this eye of light, Anyawu, is not just like for warmth or good harvest. It has a lot to do with like clarity as well. So there, people would go to Anyawu for the ability to see through confusion and deception and the fog of circumstance when life is, a bit, things are a bit confusing and you're not really sure like what path to go or what decision to make. Yeah, Anyawu is considered, a son of Chuku, and has a very close direct association with the supreme being, and actually is the most direct channel to Chuku, which kind of emphasizes the importance of, having clarity, having insight, having being illuminated, being enlightened. So one of the most significant Igbo communities and one of the oldest is the Nri community, and they did quite a bit of like facial scarification in patterns that mirrored the rays of the sun. And one historian actually said this was their way of honoring the sun, but also a way of like personal transformation and inscribing, the divine onto the body. And then when you go into more recent history, post-colonial history in Nigeria, there was a civil war, for those who may not know, in Nigeria in the 1960s, the Biafran War, where the Igbo people declared independence. The flag that they designed had the rising sun at its center. And
oh
this
yeah.
wasn't just a coincidence. Yeah, yeah, it wasn't just a coincidence. Igbo land had kind of been called the land of the rising sun, and Anyanwu being the eye of the light was kind of, almost represented in that symbol of nationhood, because the sun is almost like a symbol of perfection, something every person is called toward. Light unveils what, maybe has been hidden. And that's where that clarity piece kind of comes into it. So yeah, I found this very interesting and very introspective. What I like about the Igbo cosmology is it's not just, the folk tales. It's also kind of similar to our last episode with the Hadza tribe. There's a lot of, the belief systems interwoven into these deities as well of a culture.
Mm.
By understanding these deities, we understand the culture, we understand the people, we understand the values. And it also brings lessons, applicable lessons for everyday life as well. So the next deity I'll be touching on is Ekwensu. Ekwensu I found really interesting because there's quite a bit to unpack with Ekwensu. Very similar to Eshu of the Yoruba religion and Yoruba mythology. Ekwensu is seen as like it's kind of like a trickster deity, but also very misunderstood, similar to Eshu of the Yoruba people. Many who grew up in modern Christian Igbo households, or anyone who's encountered Igbo culture through maybe contemporary Nigerian media, whether it's in movies, whether it's books, Ekwensu has been seen in modern times as a devil, as Satan and the embodiment of evil. But this is actually a one of the most successful acts of like cultural rewriting in African history, because Ekwensu was not the devil. He was a deity of war, cunning, and trade. And before any European missionary arrived in Igbo land, he occupied a respected space in the cosmological order. So he's ranked alongside Allah, the earth goddess we mentioned, Amadioha, the thunder god, as one of the greatest forces in the Igbo world. In some communities, Ekwensu was even seen as a savior god, a figure that stepped in to protect people in times of crisis. Warriors built shrines to him before battle and dismantled them after victory. So his power was very real, and his protection was sought out, and his name was invoked with reverence. And there were also communities named after him in states in Nigeria like Enugu, in State. There is a festival apparently right before the New Yam season that has like a dialectical variation of his name.
Mm.
So all these things kind of show that this was not really a being that people feared in the way they feared a demon. This was, somebody or a deity that in the past times was celebrated. So he was a god of war, similar to, maybe like Ogun in the Yoruba mythology and religion, but not in a bloodthirsty, chaotic sense. It was more of a purposeful violence. But then he also had this embodiment of the cunning, the strategy, and ferocity needed to outmaneuver enemies, survive conflict, and win. In peacetime, he had kind of similar qualities where he's the god of trade and bargaining. Traders invoked him before market days for sharpness of mind, strategic intelligence, and the ability to negotiate well and come out ahead. So, actually, some scholars and practitioners have compared him to Loki in Norse
Hmm.
mythology. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. S- So, he's seen as like a trickster who's not neither good nor evil in simple terms, but operates in the complex space where cunning meets consequence. I think this is really interesting because I'm currently rewatching Game of Thrones for the first time watching it. I've watched it before, but first time watching in a long time. So maybe
Mm.
the last time I watched it, probably I finished it. When did it finish? 2018, 2019. That's probably when I finished it. So I'm rewatching it, and obviously I'm maybe a lot older rewatching it. And just realizing a lot of it was just it's all about strategy and survival. Basically,
Yep.
that's what that show, that's what the books are all about: strategy, survival, and human nature as well. So looking at this, looking at kind of what this deity embodied, these are things that actually in everyday life, we think you think, oh, being strategic is something that's maybe it's only reserved for certain types of people, people who maybe they're very ambitious, or they want a lot of power, or they want, to they have certain, lofty goals in mind. But actually strategy and, all this strategic thinking and really weighing things up, this we do this every day, every single day, every interaction. Some interactions will carry more weight than others, where you're kind of calculating things a little bit more. But having these types of um ability to negotiate, strategic intelligence, sharpness of mind, these are things we use in our brains, skills
Yeah,
that we
day
use
to
every
day.
day, on a day to day. Exactly. So it shows how fundamental a deity like this is in terms of the Igbo culture, in terms of even applicability to loads of other cultures as well. So that's very interesting that he was misunderstood.
Do we know whether he's um like in the Igbo Bible, like he's that's the name for devil?
Yeah, so that's one of the things coming to. So
Oh,
basically the
sorry.
Chris no, it's good. It's good. It's good. I mean, let's get a head start. It's good. So when the Christian missionaries arrived in Igbo land in the 19th century, they had a translation problem. So very similar to the Yoruba Bible, where they needed a word for the devil, for Satan, for the supreme enemy of God, for the embodiment of evil in Christian theology. And so they looked at the Igbo cosmological landscape and they chose Ekwensu, which maybe some people say maybe it was an understandable error or an understandable calculation, because he was associated with violence, chaos, unpredictable. He dealt in power that felt dangerous to outsiders who didn't understand its context. So they mapped their concept of Satan onto him and used his name.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, these trickster warrior figures exist in almost every major mythology, because as we said, every culture understands that intelligence, strategy, and controlled chaos, they're divine qualities, but they're also fundamental qualities, of everyday
Yeah.
life.
And I guess you can be it can be used for good and bad as well, like those qualities.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, exactly. And so the consequences of using Ekwensu, or like misunderstanding Ekwensu, and associating his name with Satan, that's been profound and long lasting. Scholars have documented that this shift didn't just rename a god, it dismantled the entire framework of understanding. There were communities, as we said, that bore pride in Ekwensu's name. They renamed themselves, they destroyed the shrines. Some of the festivals that celebrated his power were abandoned. And one scholar said that, it's almost like a state of demon mania, where people became very anxious and compulsive, and just like feeling like, oh, there's evil sources that simply didn't really exist in the pre-colonial Igbo mind in the same
Hmm.
way. So where the arrival of the Christian missionaries, there's obviously this demonization that we've seen across many different African mythologies, African traditional religions. We've seen this, and that has caused distance from the culture, but also it's increased the superstitious beliefs, it's increased the anxieties within people. That's why people get to the point of, I don't even want to know anything about
Yeah.
that. I don't
And
even
they're
want to
scared to even
do,
look into
because
it.
that is evil. You're scared to even look into it because you're like, it's so evil. It's so wrong. But it's literally culture, and if these things are being they were misappropriated, they're not being seen in the way that they originally existed and originally intended. That's a bit problematic. And a lot of modern scholars have been doing work to kind of unpack a lot of these, and to try and reclaim a lot of these beliefs and rediscover them. But we cannot deny that so much damage has been done on that
Yeah.
side.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about Anyanwu, the Eye of Light, clarity, Ekwensu, who is the warrior trickster, and then we now have Agwu. So Agwu is another deity. Strange. a bit unsettling. But for that reason, probably a very interesting deity. Actually, I would say like I did quite a bit of research on Anyanwu and Ekwensu. Agwu, I probably need to do a little bit more looking into it. So y'all know no juju. We just do a little bit. We do a
We
little
dip the
bit.
toe.
We do
You
a
know,
little
we
bit.
want to inspire
We dip our toes. We
curiosity.
want to
You know,
inspire
we want you to.
curiosity,
We want
as you
you
can see.
to go. And if you find anything that piques your interest, go and look. No, go and look into it. Don't be scared.
Look into it. Let us know. Comment, like, share, subscribe, interact with us. If there's even anything that we are saying here that you're like, these guys are
Yeah.
just jokers. This is wrong.
There's probably a lot of that.
Let us know. There's a lot of that. We know. Let us know because we are also students of mythology. We are also keen to know. And as we have said, we've told y'all, this is, it's all about the vibes, the knowledge vibes, the curious vibes, the educational vibes, the vibes of the vibes. So please, yeah, let us know. But yeah, I am saying this because I believe this deity is actually quite a complex
Ooh.
one, and so there might be a little bit of simplification here and there. Please bear with us, bear with me. But I think there's a lot more for all of them, really, a lot more to dive deeper into. So Agwu, sometimes called Agusi, is the god of divination, healing, and medicine. He's the patron of the Dibia. The Dibia is the Igbo healer diviner, in the same way that Apollo was the patron of physicians in ancient Greece. So every Dibia kind of apparently they begin their morning by striking a tortoise shell in a slow rhythm, speaking in language, offering praise, because Agwu always watches, and what Agwu gives, he can take away. But what makes Agwu unlike other healer deities is that his primary mode of action is actually confusion.
Ooh.
S- Yes, so he manifests through giddiness, forgetfulness, sudden inexplicable scrambling of a perfectly clear mind. There's a famous description that a person who's possessed by Agwu can be holding a key in their hand and still be searching frantically for it in their room. They can talk in their sleep. They may listen to voices that aren't there. They may experience cascades of misfortune, financial collapse, failed crops, deteriorating health that comes from no visible source. And so, when an Igbo person has suffered in ways that cannot be explained rationally, Agwu was often seen as the answer, scattering the mind, bringing confusion to those who did not honor him properly or violated the codes of conduct expected of healers and diviners. But the genius of the deity is that he wasn't simply a destructive force. The same spirit that breaks down a mind can also rebuild it into something extraordinary. And so, when a person is gifted with an exceptional creative talent or unusual insight, with the capacity to heal others or to divine the hidden causes of suffering, that too is seen as Agwo's work. That same force that creates madness creates genius, and the spirit that scatters can also focus, it can also concentrate. So a lot of religious traditions try to keep order and chaos, reason and madness very clearly separated, but Agu kind of refuses that separation and embodies both at once. And in doing that, we kind of learn something about the true nature of intelligence itself. The boundary between genius and madness is thin, and that same sensitivity that might make a healer able to perceive suffering can also make them vulnerable to being overwhelmed by it. So I find that just so fascinating and so interesting, because a lot of these deities, it's not just about the folk tales or okay, there is represent this and this is their color and this is that. These are belief systems. These are ways of kind of explaining the world, explaining human nature, explaining what is within us. And so the practical relationship between the Agu and the Dibia, the healers, it's worth us exploring a bit further, because obviously we had our own traditional medicine in
Yep.
Africa across various cultures. And Igbo land, the Dibia, they didn't just have the medical knowledge, they were also possessed and called into service by Agwu, who then supervised their practice. And if they change too much in the practice, Agwu would see. We said Agwu is always watching. If they use their power to harm rather than heal, that would be noticed by Agwu. If they broke traditions, their protection would withdraw. So Agu was not just like a patron, he was also kind of regulating things, divine accountability for people who held the intimate power of life and death in the community. I want to make a joke, but I'll leave the
Uh-uh.
joke.
They
I'll
make a
leave
joke
it
now.
out. I'm not gonna say it.
I,
I'm not gonna say it. I'm not
I,
gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it. I'll say it
I also
after
want to say
this,
something, but
after the
I decided
episode.
not to say it either.
Let's not, it might be the same. It might be the
I don't
same thing.
I
It
don't I
might be
don't
the
think
same
so,
thing.
but yeah, I cannot. It involves a particular celebrity, and I was like,
Oh,
when you were like, was
whoa.
two sides of the same coin? I was like, oh, like, he can either kind of like bring confusion, or he could bring like genius, and I was like, oh, and there's somebody that there's somebody that comes to mind when I think of that.
Oh, yes. I
But
think I know who
I will
you're
leave
talking
this
about. We
unspoken.
all have, I think we all have different people in our
Yes, yes.
minds,
You can think of
guys.
everything. Everyone can think of somebody like that, whether
Yes,
in media or
like
in their own
that.
personal lives,
Yep,
or maybe
yep.
themselves.
Maybe themselves. Maybe themselves.
You could be confused while
We,
listening to this
we could.
as well.
That is true.
But yes, please carry on.
Thank you very much. So there is Agwu, Anyanwu, Ekwensu. Now let's look at the system as the host. Oh, sorry, we look at the system as a whole. System as a host. Look at the system as a whole. So as we've said, Anyanwu was the sun, and what we get from that is that the highest aspiration of being a human being is not necessarily comfort or success, but clarity, the ability to see truly, to see through, and to see ahead, which I find very interesting because I think I've seen that actually more commonly. Like the greatest success is knowing
Mm.
yourself, knowing where you're going. It's intimate knowing of, yeah, just the world and where your place in the world, knowing where you're going, and just having that clarity. I think that's a really really poignant statement. Then we spoke about Ekwensu, who is this warrior trickster with the cunning and the strategic intelligence that are not to be feared. The qualities are not to be feared or demonized, but can be channeled with purpose. Then we've got Agu, this also, healer but agent of confusion, teaching that knowledge and madness and confusion may not be complete opposites, and maybe the same source from which enlightenment and healing can come, confusion and disarray can come from that
Mm.
as well. And so it's a lot of kind of philosophy in that, in all of this.
Right, because if we even think of like, for example, like people who have had like very radical ideas that have, you know, ended up being very accurate, or like, you know, um, now is the basis of the way we just see it as normal. Now, for example, like flat flat Earth versus round Earth, or things like that. Like
Yeah.
those people were seen as crazy
Yep.
when they initially,
Yep.
you know, there's this anime called Orb. I don't know if you've spoken about this,
Oh no.
where it's basically exploring. I haven't finished it yet. I haven't thought about it, but it basically explores like the journey to discovering that like the Earth is. Oh, actually, no, that's different. That it's initially they thought that the Earth, that the planet revolved around the Earth,
Hmm.
and it was basically seen as like taboo to have any other thoughts, and it was kind of like seen as like a religious thing, and then some scientists then
Yes.
actually discovered that, oh, actually it's the Earth revolves around the the sun, and those people were seen as like crazy, and but actually they were correct.
Yes.
So yeah, that's very very interesting.
Absolutely true. I mean, one of the people that come to mind when I think about this is Robert Goddard. So I recently went to a National Space Museum, and he is thought of as one of the founding fathers of rocketry. He was born in Massachusetts in the USA in the 19th century, and he began to become very interested in space when he was really young after reading War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, and then he decided to pursue rocketry as his life's work when he was climbing a tree, and thought to himself, oh, it would be so wonderful to like invent something that has the possibility of going to Mars, and so he wrote about the possibility of making a liquid fueled rocket in the early 1900s. And in 1926, he was the first person in the world to ever launch a rocket.
Oh wow.
Yes, but he launched 31 rockets throughout his career, but he was often ridiculed for his theories. And in the 20s, actually, the New York Times stated that he lacked the knowledge laid out daily in high schools. And newspapers went on to say a lot about how they believed, space travel was impossible. Following the launch of the Apollo 11 in 1969, uh, over 20 years after his death, that same newspaper printed an apology because he was a brilliant scientist, and he was often
Wow.
ridiculed for, dreaming big and, believing that this was something that humans could achieve. So absolutely, absolutely, what is actual true brilliance, knowledge, it can easily be seen as confused with madness, intelligence, confused with madness. And yeah, it's quite sad. But actually, one really interesting thing is that these are all this is basically what it's still of philosophical things that we're exploring, but also obviously we're doing it through the lens of myths and mythology and deities. But that is actually how humans over time we've always used myths and legends and folklore, to even religion, to really express the most serious ideas, the most consequential ideas of being a human nature. We also covered today, the yeah, just the demonization of African traditional religion, which, as we can see, this is not great because you know
Mm.
understanding these deities, they allow us to better understand ourselves. They provide us with deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. And yeah, just losing that is, it's really a shame. It's really a shame because then maybe certain things that we some of us have been through or we've gone through, maybe we would have been able to navigate some of these things a little bit better if we had some of these belief systems more ingrained in our everyday life, even through study, even through schools and things like that. So I think it's a real shame, but that's why we were kind of exploring them through this medium, because yeah, I think there's so much we can learn from this. The knowledge continue to survive in oral traditions, in the work of scholars, cultural practitioners, and in communities that never entirely let go of what they knew. As I said, there's a new generation of Igbo thinkers and writers and practitioners doing the slow and careful work of reconstruction. But before we close on, this is almost like a Igbo cosmology 101, light, don't forget,
Light.
a light one. But yeah, I think another important idea just to touch on just before we close is the chi. So every person in Igbo spiritual thought has their own chi. This is a personal divine force, a spiritual counterpart that walks with you through life and shapes your destiny. So chi is not a god. It's not a supreme being, but it's more intimate than that. It is the divine that exists within you, specifically configured to your particular existence. And there's an Igbo proverb that gets at this well. Correct me if wrong. Onye kwe
Mhm.
chi ya ekwe. When a person agrees, their chi agrees. So the implication is that your fate is not fixed from outside. It's a negotiation. It's a conversation. It's the choices you make in every day between your inner divine, you and your inner divine essence. You have agency, but that agency is in dialogue with something bigger than yourself. And so destiny is almost, described in this worldview as like a pregnancy. So something that grows within you quietly and invisibly until it reaches a point where it can't be hidden any longer. And there's another Igbo saying that captures this, where it's like you can't cover a pregnant stomach with your hand. What is meant to be born will be born. Not because fate is rigid, not because like you can't change your destiny, but when you have a genuine purpose, once it's taking root, there's a momentum that cannot indefinitely be suppressed. And so the chi connects back to Chuku, which is the great chi, as your individual spiritual essence is seen as, a part of that overall divine substance that powers the whole cosmology. So this is Igbo mythology. It's always been, we've explored, had a chance to explore it through incredible literary legends like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, Chinua Achebe. We've really, honestly, it's one of the first, I would say, Igbo. I learned more about Igbo mythology earlier than I learned about Yoruba mythology,
Yeah,
because
same. I think like Igbo. It seems like Igbo people are more. I don't know. They can sort of accept that those, maybe like Christianity or things can also exist in the same space as, their history as well.
yeah.
Um, I which is maybe also because Igbo cosmology feels maybe farther away from us, so we don't feel as bad learning about it. Whereas, like, I guess Yoruba mythology and cosmology feels very close to home, so maybe I feel a bit more uncomfortable for us to look into as people that are from that side. But yeah,
I
it's
don't think
interesting.
so. I don't actually think so. I don't think so. I
Mm.
think maybe the Igbo scholars and the thinkers and the writers, and I think they've just leaned into it a little bit more. Whereas when you look at Yoruba myths, mythology, this is something that we are exploring a little bit more, I would say, now. Obviously there's great, literary legends like Wole Soyinka, who have, always drawn from that, and other, incredible authors. But I think we're, in contemporary times, is something that we're kind of, uncovering a little bit more now. But when you look at all of the greatest, Igbo canonical novels and text, they always carried some, the culture, and they kind of understood that it's not one or the other. Culture and the religion, you can learn about the culture and the belief system and the cosmology, and you can still keep your religion as well. There's people who also have the whole fear of, the demonization and the fear of that, and people, there are people who always have those fears and will never really, want to explore. But I think there's maybe more people throughout time that have just, still kept in touch with things, because I think they see it as this part of their culture, like, which is how I view, and I think we at Nobijuju view it. This is culture, this is history, this is who you are as a people. And so if you lose that, you don't even understand who you are as a person, as an individual, and as a collective. So I think it's more of a cultural, because they see it as more of a cultural thing. So maybe that's also helped some of the preservation a little bit more than other tribes, where it's seen more as like, oh, this is religion, this is purely religion. My religion is this. That is a separate religion. Whether it's related to my culture or not, this is demonic. This is evil. I cannot learn anything about
Hmm.
it. So I think, yeah, I think it's that they there's that. It's I think that's what makes it a little bit less um of a thing for them. I mean, Igbo people will probably listen to this. We do have some Igbo listeners. So you can school us on your thoughts on this and let us know,
Yes.
like, why do you think maybe Igbo cosmology and mythology is a little bit more prominent, prevalent than other mythologies, or mythological pantheons within countries like Nigeria and Africa. Do you think that your scholars, Igbo scholars, like Chimamanda Chinua Achebe, have a lot to do with this? Do you think that it's more of a cultural thing? We'd really be curious to learn what your thoughts on this are. Again, this is all about opening up conversation and having those, yeah, just having those
100%.
yeah, discussions and figuring it out as a collective. That's all we can do. That's all we can do. So I mean, the Igbo cosmological tradition is one of the most intellectually, sophisticated indigenous spiritual systems, I would say, in human history. And as many African traditional religions are, and we've seen the systematic misrepresentation as well. So recovering those stories, those origins, it's so urgent, it's so important. And yeah, we hope to explore more of this in our next episode. And yeah, that's it.
Woo.
That's it.
That's it, guys. So, thank you so much for listening. This sorry. Now we're gonna go into our African proverb of the day, well, of this episode, which is actually from "Things Fall Apart" by Chinua Achebe, chapter 3. A man who pays respect to the great paves the way for his own greatness.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yep.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
I think it's apt, just like this episode, just in general with the podcast as well, like just knowing your, yeah, paying respect, paying homage to your ancestry and your history,
Those that came before
you know,
you,
and those that came before you is important. It's important.
because some things never change.
Yep. And history, as they say, repeats itself.
So we might as
So,
well learn from people who've walked those roads before you, draw on their wisdom and use that kind of to go forth in life.
yep.
Alrighty, guys. That is it. Our first mini we said mini it's still 53 minutes. I don't
It's
understand.
still just looking at the time.
I don't
It's been very
understand what kind of
52 minutes.
mini.
This is so,
Well, so
yeah.
that means if we
This
if we
is
did that proper format, we would have been entering. Okay, would have been entering 1 hour 30 minutes. Okay, good, good.
we'll just log
They
off.
will, and we'll see. Oh, the listener count. Only 5% of people reach the end of the episode. Please. Well, those of you that stayed with us till the end, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Oh, like, share, follow, subscribe, comment, do all the things, please.
Do all the things, press all the
All the
buttons.
buttons.
Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.